Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. Let's watch.
I don't either.
Would either of you describe yourself as codependent?
Yeah, probably. He does everything for me.
And Sumit, what about you?
Yeah, I do describe myself as a codependent because I'm depending on Jenny for my happiness. Like whether I cook for her, whether
Okay, so they're using that term. Codependency, I don't think they're using it in the clinical sense. You could argue that codependency has no real clinical definition because it's not something that is frequently codified in research, but it is sometimes. Anyway, so the way that I define it and the way that it is often defined in the literature, but not always, at least this is more clinical, more accurate, is someone who is codependent is someone who defines themselves by overfunctioning for someone else. They need someone else to underfunction, and they don't know what to do unless someone is underfunctioning. So you have a classic example is a codependent person needs someone who suffers from alcohol addiction to take care of, to look down on, to maybe even control, to make themselves feel needed and maybe superior. There's a lot of different versions of it, but that's codependency, is overfunctioning. And what they're describing is over-dependency, or, well, they're actually describing a few different things. I think Sean is asking, are you dependent on each other? That's why I think codependent, unless you know the where it comes from, then it sounds like that's what it means, right? That you're codependent, right? You're both dependent. You're co-parenting, right? Co-parenting meaning you're both parenting in parallel tracks, and you're codependent. You're depending on each other. No, the word codependent, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again, is that it comes from you had someone who was dependent on alcohol, someone they were chemically dependent, meaning that they depended on a chemical, on alcohol or cocaine or something. And then you had the codependent, you had the co-chemical dependent person, because they're a co-pilot in the dependency on substance. So you have a pilot and a co-pilot, you have a driver and a co-driver, and you have the person who is suffering from addiction, and you have the co-person suffering from addiction. So that's where it comes from. Co-pilot, codependency, codependent on alcohol, not both dependent. So what the proper term in my field is just overdependency. Just say overdependent or too dependent or problematically dependent on someone else. You overdepend on someone else, meaning that you don't have enough independence. You're too enmeshed. You assume you can't do things on your own. You're too afraid to be on your own. You have someone that will always help you all the time. Think Colt and Debbie. You're dependent on Debbie too much because Debbie always is there for you cooking your meals. That's over-dependency. So they're asking, are you over-dependent on each other? And then Jenny says that maybe she is overly dependent on him. And then he says, well, I'm dependent on her, yeah, because I love her and I need her. So what he's describing is healthy dependency. Let's rewind.
Would either of you describe yourself as codependent?
Yeah, probably. He does everything for me.
Yeah, so she's describing, it's like, yeah, maybe. And you don't usually hear that from people on these shows, that you're just like, yeah, maybe we're a codependent. Meaning, I think Jenny is agreeing, maybe we don't have enough other things in our lives. Maybe I am not independent enough. Maybe I don't know enough about how to exist in India, or I'm just sort of letting him take care of me because he often does. And so maybe I am overly dependent on him to help me, and I'm not independent enough.
And Sumit, what about you?
Yeah, I do describe myself as a codependent because I'm depending on Jenny for my happiness. Like whether I cook for her, whether I do anything, even the basic things.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. There could be something wrong with that, but it's not necessarily something wrong with that. It doesn't sound like there's something wrong with it. It didn't look like there was something wrong with it. Gender-wise, it doesn't look normal or culturally mainstream, but so there's a bias there. If it were reversed, it's like, well, that's her job. That's her, that's what she's supposed to be doing. That's the romantic thing, is for her to be cooking for him and cleaning after him, all this kind of stuff. And so he's saying that. Now, it's possible that he is required to do too much and that it's unfair and that Jenny is getting away with something. Okay. It kind of doesn't look that way to me, but I don't know. So, and, you can have couples where one person is legit doing 70, 80% of the shared chores, making dinner, cleaning, that kind of thing. And as long as everyone's generally happy and no one's getting crapped on and there's flexibility there, it's not inherently a problem. So even if he is doing more, it's possible that he just some people just really love cooking. Some people really love cooking for other people. Some people don't. Some people really want a clean place. Some people don't. Some people really like to clean or they don't mind cleaning. Some people don't. Some people like to organize. So it kind of depends. I want to be cautious, though, because there are so many examples of women being required to do a lot more of the work in the house, and men and society, and maybe even the women themselves, will consider that to be normal. Statistics show that with women entering the workforce or returning to the workforce, because they were in the workforce during World War II, but they are, from the 70s, 80s, 90s, started working more in the workplace in heterosexual marriages with kids. And statistics show that men retained their expectation that when they get home from work, they don't have to do the chores as much, child rearing, cooking the food, cleaning, this kind of thing. Whereas the women they retained their expectation not only on them, but for themselves. So they would work 40, 50 hours a week, come home, and also be expected to cook, clean, take care of the kids, everything like that. Not always. It's on average, of course. There are some heterosexual relationships where the men are being crapped on in that way, are being forced to do that kind of stuff. So, but on average, and it's, clear in the data that is true. And so I don't want to put that out there that somehow differentials in differences in the amount of chores one does, that it's always normal. It's not. It's certainly a red flag of something, but it's not a slam dunk indication of something that's wrong. But anyway, so he's saying, I depend on her to be happy. Like, I'm happy when she's happy. That is normal. For people to say that, it is often described as codependent. And it's not, particularly if a man says it, it's not. We are dependent creatures. We are social creatures. We absolutely, physiologically and psychologically depend on others. 99.9% of us depend, our happiness, our well-being depends on other people being happy and other people being safe and feeling safe around those people and feeling useful to those people. So I think that's what he's saying. I think he's actually trying to put that out there, just like, yeah, I depend on her because I love her and I want her to be happy.
Depending on Jenny for my happiness, whether I cook for her, whether I do anything, even the basic things, her response to that makes me happy. And that kind of happiness I was looking in my life.
Oh,
Now, can someone become overly dependent? Meaning, so it's all about flexibility. So let's say that Jenny's having a bad day or she's not in town. Can Sumit soothe himself? Does he have other things that he can do? Can he be okay without her validating him? Can he validate himself? Is Jenny actually validating him, or is she withholding that so that he will do more and more and more and try to please her? Those are the questions. There's nothing about what he said that is pathological. In fact, I would venture that I would put forth that what he's saying is actually, at least the vibe and what we've seen on camera, is actually an indication of a lot of health. In fact, when I hear this, it is encouraging. It makes me think that their relationship is, and earlier in the tell-all, people were accusing them of, I think Ed, accusing them of having like a fake relationship or a bad relationship or something. It's like, no. They've had some issues, and I've talked about it, and he really was triggering like a year ago when he was telling Jenny to calm down that time. Oh my God. So yeah, but I think on average they have a pretty conflict-free, mutually supportive, happy relationship. All right, well, that does it for that episode. If you didn't know already, we have a website, obviously, but there's a lot of stuff on the website that might be interesting to you. Also, we have an audio podcast, if you don't know, that you can access on your phone on a podcast app. We go into more depth on a lot of other things. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.